I knew something bad had happened before I ever saw the bruise, because the air in Moretti's steakhouse that night felt like the moment before a glass shatters. Silent, stretched thin, everyone pretending not to notice the crack forming. I was polishing wine glasses behind the bar when the front door chimed and a draft of humid July air slipped inside with her. And if you're the kind of person who believes some men deserve consequences and some women deserve protecting, you might want to like and subscribe to Stories That Don't Look Away, because this was the night Elena walked in wearing long sleeves she'd known yesterday. She was never late, not in the 3 years I'd worked alongside her, not through fevers, blizzards, or the night a drunk bachelor party tipped her with a fake lottery ticket and laughed while she cried in the storage room. So when she pushed through the door 10 minutes past shift, head down, smile already preloaded like she'd practiced it in the reflection of the glass, every one of us felt the shift. Even the regulars sensed it. Forks pausing midair, conversations dipping just enough to listen without looking like they were listening. The sleeves were wrong first, black net, too thick for summer, cuffs tugged low over her wrists, and the way she carried the water pitcher told the rest of the story, elbow locked stiff, shoulder tight, like moving hurt in places she didn't want anyone asking about. Our manager started toward her with a lecture about punctuality, then spotted who was seated at table 12 and changed direction so fast you'd think the floor had tilted. Luca Moretti himself, quiet king of this place and several others, the kind of man who never raised his voice because he never needed to, sat with 2 guests who laughed a little too loud, trying to impress someone whose approval could change their year. Luca didn't dress like money. He dressed like control. Dark suit, no shine, no watch, no ring, but when he glanced up and his eyes landed on Elena, it felt like the room's temperature dropped a degree. I watched him the way you watch a storm build over water, subtle at first, then undeniable, his gaze tracking the tremor in her hand when she set down bread, the careful way she turned her body so her left side faced away from tables, the flinch when a busser dropped a fork behind her, and the sound cracked through the room. He didn't call her over right away. Luca never chased information. He let it come to him, patient as gravity, and when she finally approached with a bottle of red, rehearsed smile in place, I saw the moment she realized he'd already noticed everything. "You fall?" he asked, voice level, not loud, not soft, just placed. It was the kind of question that sounds harmless if you don't know what it's really asking. "Stairs," she said too quickly, eyes on the label as if the vineyard year mattered more than the truth. I should have looked away, but I didn't, and neither did he. His hand moved, slow enough to stop if she pulled back, fast enough to catch her wrist before the sleeve slipped again, and when the fabric rode up an inch, the color there wasn't wine dark but fingerprint purple, fading yellow at the edges like a bruise already a few days old, layered with a newer one blooming beside it. The man at his table stopped pretending to chew. Luca's thumb didn't press, didn't hurt, just held, like he was measuring something invisible. "Who?" he said, and I swear the clink of glassware in the kitchen sounded miles away. "Put their hands on you?" She tried the shrug, the laugh, the little performance women learn when truth feels more dangerous than lies. "It's nothing." That's when his chair legs scraped back across tile, a sound too loud for how gently he stood, and every conversation in the restaurant thinned to a wire. I've seen Luca angry exactly twice, and both times it looked like stillness, like a lake before ice forms. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. "Who the fuck did this?" he asked, not to the room, not even to her, more like to the universe, as if it had made a clerical error and he intended to file a correction. Elena's eyes shone but didn't spill. She shook her head once, tiny, terrified of what would happen if she said a name, and I understood then that whatever had happened at home wasn't just pain. It was routine, rehearsed, a script she'd been forced to memorize. Luca released her wrist as carefully as he'd taken it, like the bruise might spread if touched too hard, and nodded once. Decision made in a place deeper than temper. "Finish your shift," he told her, tone suddenly gentle, almost ordinary. "We'll talk later." To anyone who didn't know him, it sounded like dismissal. To those of us who did, it sounded like a verdict already signed. The rest of the night moved in strange slow motion. Steaks sizzled, wine poured, laughter tried to return to normal, but under it all ran a quiet current. The sense that somewhere beyond the warm lights and linen napkins, a clock had started ticking for a man who didn't yet know his time had run out. I kept catching Luca watching Elena. Not possessive, not hungry, just watchful, like a guard dog that had chosen its person. And every time she passed table 12, his gaze flicked to the door, to the windows, to the reflection in the mirror behind the bar, mapping exits, threats, possibilities. By closing time, the bruise on her arm wasn't the only thing everyone had seen. We'd all witnessed the exact moment a line had been crossed in a city where lines mattered, and as I stacked chairs and killed the lights, I had the uneasy feeling that tomorrow would arrive missing someone who'd gone to bed believing no one powerful had noticed what he'd done. By the next evening, the city was moving the way it always did. Traffic thick, neon buzzing to life, people arguing over nothing outside corner stores. Yet under all that ordinary noise, I felt the quiet drag of something already set in motion, like a train you can't see yet, but can feel through the rails, and I knew, the way you sometimes just know, that somewhere a man named Darren Cole was still walking around believing the worst thing that could happen to him was a hangover or a parking ticket. I didn't know his name that morning, not officially, but Elena did, and names have weight when spoken in the right rooms. She came in early for her shift, eyes ringed with a sleepless night, and tried to act like nothing had shifted in her world. But the air around her had that brittle quality of someone waiting for a door to be kicked in or a phone to start ringing. Luca arrived just before dinner rush, alone this time, no guests, no show, and took his usual table like a man sitting down to finish paperwork. He asked for espresso instead of wine, which I'd learned meant he was thinking, not socializing. And when Elena approached with the tiny cup balanced on a saucer, her hand steadier tonight, he didn't mention the bruise at all. After your shift, he said quietly, eyes on the creamus swirling in the porcelain. You'll sit with me for 5 minutes. It wasn't a command dressed as kindness. It was an appointment with gravity. She nodded, and I saw relief flicker through her fear, because some part of her had already decided that silence was more dangerous than whatever help looked like in Luca Moretti's world. Dinner moved in waves, anniversaries, business deals, a birthday song off key in the corner, and Luca stayed, not eating, just observing, occasionally murmuring into his phone in a language too soft for me to catch, while two men I'd never seen before took seats at the bar and didn't drink, eyes scanning reflections instead of bottles. Around 10, Elena's phone buzzed in her apron pocket and she flinched so hard she nearly dropped a tray. She glanced at the screen, color draining from her face, and turned it over without answering. Luca saw. Of course he saw. He didn't ask then, just watched the rest of the night unfold with the patience of someone who already knows the ending of a story and is simply waiting for the last page to turn. After closing, when the last chair was stacked and the kitchen lights clicked off one by one, I pretended to wipe down the bar slower than necessary, because curiosity is a vice I've never beaten. And Elena sat across from Luca at table 12 with her hands folded tight in her lap. His name, Luca said, not unkindly. She swallowed. Darren. The name landed between them like a stone dropped in deep water. Last name, Cole. Luca nodded once, committing it somewhere permanent. He lives with you? A shake of her head. Comes over. Has a key. The corner of Luca's mouth tightened. Not anger. Not yet. More like disappointment in the world's recurring patterns. Does he work? Construction. Sometimes. She gave a humorless half-smile. Mostly he just watches me. That word did it. I saw Luca's posture shift, subtle but absolute, as if a line item had moved from inconvenience to offense. Did he ever put you in a hospital? She hesitated too long. That was answer enough. Luca exhaled slowly through his nose, then stood, chair sliding back with a soft scrape this time, controlled. Go home, he told her. Lock the door. Don't answer if he knocks. If he calls, don't pick up. She looked up at him, eyes wide. What are you going to do? He met her gaze evenly. I'm going to have a conversation. Outside, rain had started without warning, slicking the street in reflections of red and gold from the restaurant sign. And as Elena hurried toward her car, two dark shapes detached themselves from the shadow near the alley. Men in coats too light for the weather, moving with purpose that didn't need to be announced. I watched from the window, cloth still in my hand, as Luca spoke briefly with them under the awning. No gestures, no theatrics, just a quiet exchange that ended with both men nodding and walking off in opposite directions like points on a compass. Somewhere across town, Darren was probably finishing a beer, maybe scrolling through Elena's social media, building fresh accusations out of old photos, the way men like him turn imagination into evidence. He didn't know that his name had just been spoken in a room where problems stop being personal and start becoming logistical. Later, long after I'd closed my register and stepped into the wet night air, I passed a black SUV idling at the corner, windows dark, engine humming with the patience of something waiting for a signal, and I understood that whatever Darren thought love gave him the right to do, fear was about to teach him the limits of that belief. Back inside, Luca remained at table 12 alone, espresso long gone cold, eyes on nothing and everything, a man not fueled by rage but by a colder principle. In his city, some debts were collected not in money, not in apologies, but in absence. And by morning, someone who had gone to sleep certain of his control would wake up, if he woke at all, in a world where his name no longer opened doors but closed them. 3 mornings after Darren Cole stopped answering his phone, the city carried on with the bored indifference it gives to missing men. And if not for the way Elena stood a little straighter behind the hostess stand, you might have thought nothing at all had changed. But I had been there the night the question was asked, and I could still hear the scrape of Luca's chair in the back of my mind like a promise being kept. She came in without the long sleeves this time, a soft gray blouse that showed clean skin where bruises had been, and she kept touching her forearm absently, as if surprised by the absence of pain. Customers noticed the smile first, that cautious, almost disbelieving version people wear when peace feels temporary, like a borrowed coat they're afraid to wrinkle. Around lunch, 2 patrol officers came in asking if we'd seen Darren recently. Routine questions, notepad out, tone bored. Apparently his job site said he hadn't shown up. Landlord said rent was late. Phone went straight to voicemail. And Elena's hands trembled just once before she set down their waters. No, she said. And it wasn't a lie so much as a closing door. She hadn't seen him, not since the night before Luca made a phone call that lasted less than a minute. The officers left with shrugs, already onto the next small mystery, because grown men vanish every day in cities like ours, and most of the time it's their own fault in ways no one wants written down. That evening, after the dinner rush thinned and candles burned low in puddles of wax, Luca asked Elena to sit again. Same table, same calm gravity, and I stayed close enough to polish silverware that didn't need polishing. He won't bother you, Luca said, not triumphant, not cruel, just factual. Elena searched his face like she might find a crack that would let daylight in. Is he? She couldn't finish. Luca held her gaze. He won't hurt you. Or anyone. That's what matters. It wasn't an answer you could take to court, but it was the only kind that existed in his world. She nodded slowly, and I watched relief and guilt wrestle behind her eyes, because freedom bought at a cost you don't see still feels like debt. Why me? She asked after a moment. Why did you care? Luca leaned back, considering, as if honesty required selecting the right tool. Because men like him count on silence, he said. And I don't. There was no romance in it, no velvet promises, just a boundary drawn in permanent ink. But understand something, he added, voice gentler now. When I protect someone, it doesn't end the next day. If trouble looks for you again, it finds me first. The words settled heavy, not a chain, but not entirely wings either. Elena looked around the restaurant, at Maria laughing with a busser, at me pretending not to listen, at the windows reflecting a street that suddenly felt less hostile, and I could see the moment she understood safety, here, came with a long shadow. Okay, she said quietly. Luca gave a single nod, agreement sealed without paperwork, and stood to leave, pausing only to place enough cash on the table to cover a meal he hadn't eaten. Outside, a black car idled, headlights off, blending into the night like it belonged there. And when Luca slid into the back seat, the city seemed to exhale, balance restored in a way no headline would ever record. Elena watched through the glass until the car disappeared, then touched her bare arm again, as if confirming the bruise hadn't come back when she wasn't looking. And for the first time since I'd known her, she walked home without checking over her shoulder. While somewhere far from streetlights and steakhouse chatter, a man who once believed fear made him powerful had learned too late that in this city, fear answered to someone else.